Imagine a time when something as simple as a pineapple could make you the talk of the town. We're talking centuries ago, a different world. Back then, bringing a pineapple to a party wasn't just a nice gesture. It was a massive statement. It screamed, I am rich, I am powerful, I am connected. Pineapples didn't grow in Europe. They were a tropical fruit. Christopher Columbus found them in the Caribbean in the late 1400s. He called them pina de Indes because they looked like pine cones. But these weren't just any pine cones. They were sweet, juicy, and utterly foreign to European tastes. For a long time, Europeans only read about them or saw drawings. Getting a fresh one across the Atlantic was incredibly hard. The journey was long and tough. Ships were slow. There was no refrigeration. Fruits would rot on the voyage. Only a very few pineapples made it to Europe in good condition. These rare survivors were treasures. They might have been picked unripe to last longer or specially packed. Even then, many spoiled. So, just getting one to a port like London or Paris was an event in itself. It was almost like a miracle, and when they did arrive, they weren't cheap. The cost of transporting them was huge. Then there was the demand from the very top of society. Kings, queens, dukes, and counts all wanted to try this exotic new fruit. They were curious. They wanted what was new and exclusive. Then people tried to grow them in Europe. This was an even bigger challenge. Pineapples need warmth and humidity. Europe, especially places like England, just didn't have that climate naturally. So, clever gardeners started building hothouses. These were like early greenhouses, often made of brick and glass. They needed special heating systems, usually wood or coal fires, to keep the temperature up. It took a lot of fuel to keep a hothouse warm, especially in winter. Building these hothouses was expensive. Maintaining them was expensive. You needed skilled gardeners who knew how to grow tropical plants, which was a very specialized job. They had to understand the right soil, the right amount of water, and how to manage the heat. It wasn't easy. Growing a single pineapple could take years, sometimes 2 or 3 years from planting to harvest. And it might not even work. Many attempts failed. Because of all this, pineapples grown in Europe were even more expensive than the ones shipped over. They were a product of pure luxury, a testament to human ingenuity and extreme wealth. Only the absolute richest people could afford to have a hothouse and employ gardeners to grow pineapples. It was a hobby for the super elite. King Charles II of England, for example, was pictured receiving a pineapple from his head gardener. This wasn't just a picture of a king getting fruit. It was a propaganda piece. It showed his power, his wealth, his ability to command nature itself. It sent a message, my kingdom is so prosperous, I can even grow tropical fruit in my garden. This image was famous. It solidified the pineapple's place as a symbol of ultimate luxury and status. So, from the moment pineapples arrived in Europe, they were never just food. They were a statement. They represented something unattainable for most people. They were a symbol of global reach, scientific achievement, and immense personal wealth. This made them incredibly desirable. Everyone wanted to be seen with one, or at least to see one. They were literally a showstopper, and that desire is what eventually led to a very unusual practice renting them out. A pineapple wasn't just a fruit. It was a piece of art. It was a trophy. It was a conversation starter that no one could ignore. When you saw a pineapple, it wasn't about hunger. It was about awe. People looked at it and immediately knew the host was someone important, someone with power and money. Think about it. In a time before global markets, before refrigerated shipping containers, before even basic canning, most food was local. People ate what grew nearby. An orange was exotic, maybe. A banana was almost unheard of. But a pineapple? That was on a whole nother level. It was bright, had a crown, it was perfectly symmetrical. It looked like something from a fantasy land. So, when someone had a pineapple, they didn't just put it in a fruit bowl. They displayed it. They might put it on a special silver platter or a pedestal. It often sat right in the middle of the dining table, taking pride of place. It was the centerpiece, the star of the show. Guests would walk into the room and their eyes would go straight to it. The whole point was to be seen with it. It was like wearing the most expensive diamond necklace today for your table. It told everyone without words, I am cultured. I have connections all over the world. My taste is impeccable. My wallet is bottomless. It showed you were part of an exclusive club, you were in the know, you had access to the rarest and most exotic things. Having a pineapple at your party wasn't about the taste, not initially anyway, it was about the display. It was about the image. People wanted to impress their friends, their business partners, potential spouses for their children. They wanted to show off their elevated social standing, and a pineapple did that better than almost anything else. The desire for this symbol wasn't limited to kings and queens forever. The upper classes, the gentry, the newly rich merchants, they all saw what the super elite were doing. They wanted a piece of that status. They wanted to show they belonged, or at least aspired to belong, to the highest circles. But buying a pineapple was often still out of reach, even for someone who was quite wealthy by normal standards. The cost of one pineapple could be equal to a gardener's weekly wage, or even more. It was a huge amount of money for something that would eventually spoil. People would talk about the pineapple at a party for weeks even. Did you see Lord So-and-so's pineapple? It was magnificent. It became a topic of conversation, a way to distinguish yourself. It was a social currency. If you could provide such a spectacle, you were someone worth knowing. This created a powerful social pressure. If your rival or your friend had a pineapple at their gathering, you felt compelled to match it or even outdo it at your own. It was an unspoken competition. Keeping up appearances was incredibly important in these societies. Your social standing dictated everything: who you married, what business deals you made, where you lived. And a pineapple was a key tool in maintaining or elevating that standing. Sometimes the host would make a big show of finally cutting the pineapple. This was often done at the end of the meal, almost like a grand finale. Everyone would gather around, watching as the host carefully sliced into the prized fruit. Each guest would get a tiny sliver. Even a small piece was a luxury. It was a taste of the exotic, a moment to savor something truly special. But sometimes they didn't even cut it. The display was enough. The idea was to prolong the awe, to keep it as a symbol for as long as possible. The pineapple status was built on its rarity, its cost, and its striking appearance. It wasn't just food, it was a statement of power, a badge of honor, and a direct link to the most powerful people in society. It was the ultimate display item for any social event, and this incredible demand, combined with the extreme cost, eventually led to a very smart, very practical, and very peculiar solution for those who couldn't quite afford to buy one outright. The desire for pineapples was strong, but the supply was weak and the price was sky high. So, what do you do when something is in high demand but only available to the ultra-rich? You find a workaround. And that's exactly what happened with pineapples. A clever solution emerged: you could rent one for the night. This wasn't some formal business at first. It likely started informally. Maybe a gardener who grew them realized he could make more money by lending out a pineapple before it was fully ripe or before it was eaten. Or perhaps a wealthy household that owned a pineapple saw an opportunity to recoup some of their massive investment. They might have rented it to a slightly less wealthy family for a special occasion. Over time, this became a recognized practice. It filled a gap in the market. There were people who were wealthy, but not wealthy enough to justify spending a fortune on a single fruit they'd eat once. They could afford a grand party, fine clothes, and good food, but buying a pineapple was still too much. Renting solved this problem. It gave them access to the symbol without the full cost of ownership. Imagine you are a prosperous merchant, you've worked hard, you have a nice home, a good reputation. You want to host a dinner party to impress some important clients or social climbers. You know that lady so-and-so had a pineapple at her last gathering. You want to compete to show you're just as sophisticated. But buying a pineapple would mean cutting into your profits too much. Or perhaps you can't even find one to buy. What do? You send a discreet message to a known dealer or gardener. You ask about a rental. The process would have been simple enough. You'd arrange to pick up the pineapple or have it delivered shortly before your event. You display it prominently during your party. All your guests would marvel at it. They would praise your exquisite taste and obvious wealth. Then, once the party was over, often that same night or the next morning, the pineapple would be returned. Sometimes, the rental agreement might have stipulated that the pineapple couldn't be cut. Its whole purpose was the visual display. If it was cut, its value for future rentals would go down. So, it remained intact, a perfect specimen, only to be returned and rented out again for another gathering. This way, one very expensive pineapple could generate income multiple times over. It was a smart way to maximize its value before it eventually ripened fully or started to spoil and had to be eaten. This system allowed a broader segment of the upper middle class and gentry to participate in the pineapple phenomenon. It democratized, in a very limited way, the display of ultimate luxury. It let people project an image of wealth and status that was just beyond their everyday reach. It was an illusion, yes, but a very effective one. And in a society where appearance was everything, illusions were powerful tools. The rental market wasn't just about showing off, it was also about convenience. If you didn't have a hothouse or a gardener skilled enough to grow pineapples, renting was your only option if you wanted one for your party. It meant you didn't have to worry about the complexities of cultivation or the risks of shipping. You just paid your fee, enjoyed the prestige for a few hours, and then sent it back. This practice also tells us a lot about the social dynamics of the time. People were acutely aware of social hierarchies and how to navigate them. They understood the power of symbols, and they were willing to invest money in projecting a certain image. The pineapple rental market was a direct response to these social pressures and aspirations. It was a testament to the fruit's incredible power as a status symbol. It wasn't just a quirky historical fact, it was a sophisticated economic and social strategy in an era driven by appearances. When a rented pineapple arrived at a party, it wasn't just another item on the table. It was the main event. It took center stage, literally and figuratively. Guests would come in, and their eyes would go straight to it. A hush might even fall, followed by murmurs of admiration. "Oh, look! A pineapple!" It was more than just a fruit. It was a talking point, a marvel. Imagine the scene in a grand dining room, candles flickering, silver gleaming. The host has spared no expense on the food, the wine, the music, but all of that is almost secondary. The pineapple, sitting proudly on its stand, outshines it all. It's a beacon of exotic luxury. Guests would gather around it, discussing its beauty, its rarity, and the host's impeccable taste. It was an instant conversation starter, making the party memorable. For the host, the pineapple was validation. It showed everyone that they had arrived. They were successful enough to afford such an extravagant display. Even if they had rented it, the illusion was perfect. No one would ask if it was rented. That would be incredibly rude. The assumption was that the host was so well off they could procure such a treasure. The whole point was to create that impression of effortless wealth and sophistication. The pineapple's presence elevated the entire party. It signaled that this was not just any gathering. This was a special occasion, hosted by someone truly exceptional. It added an air of grandeur and importance. Guests felt honored to be at a party where such a rare item was displayed. It reflected well on them, too, to be invited to such an exclusive event. Sometimes, the host would tell a story about how they acquired it. Maybe a tale of a distant relative or a special connection to a ship captain who brought it from the West Indies. These stories added to the mystique. They made the pineapple even more special, enhancing its role as a narrative centerpiece. It wasn't just a fruit, it was a story of adventure and exclusivity. The act of displaying the pineapple was an art form in itself. It was often placed where it could be seen from multiple angles, catching the light, showcasing its unique form. It was a visual feast before any actual food was served, and sometimes it was never even served. Its job was done once it had been seen and admired. Why wouldn't they eat it? Because its value was primarily symbolic. If you sliced it up, it lost some of its visual impact for future display. And if you had rented it, you might not even be allowed to cut it. Its true purpose was to impress, not to be consumed. The taste, while certainly delightful, was secondary to its role as a social prop. The desire to show off was a huge motivator. In these societies, there was immense pressure to maintain and improve one's social standing. A pineapple was a powerful tool in this social game. It could help secure a favorable marriage for a child, impress a potential business partner, or simply solidify one's position within the elite. It was an investment in social capital. This phenomenon highlights how much value people placed on appearances and symbols of wealth. It wasn't just about having money, it was about showing you had it in the most impressive way possible. And a pineapple, with its exotic origins, difficult cultivation, and stunning appearance, was the perfect embodiment of that aspiration. The pineapple at the party created an experience. It wasn't just about eating a sweet fruit. It was about seeing something rare, something beautiful, something that few others had access to. It was about being part of an exclusive moment. It was a brief, dazzling glimpse into a world of immense luxury, a world that the host, even if through a rental, wanted to appear to fully inhabit. The pineapple was truly the star of the show, a silent but powerful testament to the host's status. Like all trends, the pineapple's reign as the ultimate status symbol couldn't last forever. Things change. Technology advances. What was once rare becomes common. And when that happens, the specialness fades. The main reason the pineapple lost its sparkle was simple: it became easier to get. For a long time, getting a pineapple from a tropical country to a cold European city was a monumental task. But then, things got better. Ships became faster and more reliable, shipping routes improved. People learned more about how to pack and transport delicate goods like fruit over long distances. Refrigeration, even in its early form, started to play a role. These changes meant that more pineapples could survive the journey. At the same time, growing techniques improved. Hothouses became more efficient, gardeners learned more about cultivation. While still expensive, the process of growing pineapples in Europe became a bit less incredibly difficult and costly. This meant that the supply, both from abroad and from domestic hothouses, started to increase. When something is widely available, it stops being exclusive. Imagine if suddenly everyone could afford a diamond necklace or a luxury car. They would still be nice, but they wouldn't carry the same weight of extreme wealth and status if everyone had one. The very definition of a status symbol is its scarcity. As pineapples became more common, their price naturally fell. They were no longer impossibly expensive. Middle-class families could start to afford them occasionally, not just the very rich. And once regular people could buy a pineapple from a fruit vendor, it lost its ability to shock and impress. It went from being a display of incredible wealth to just being a nice exotic fruit. The meaning of the pineapple shifted completely. It was no longer a symbol of global power or immense personal fortune. It became a delicious treat. People started buying them to eat and enjoy, not just to show off. The focus moved from its appearance on a pedestal to its taste on a plate. This decline didn't happen overnight. It was a gradual process over several decades, perhaps even a century, starting in the late 18th century and continuing through the 19th. As more and more pineapples reached the markets, the rental business would have slowly died out. There would be no point in renting something you could easily buy for a reasonable price. The story of the pineapple is a great example of how our perception of value is tied directly to scarcity and accessibility. What we consider a luxury today might be commonplace tomorrow because of changes in technology, trade, or production methods. Think about spices, for instance. Centuries ago, pepper was worth its weight in gold. Today, you buy it in a big container at any grocery store. The pineapple's journey from a rare, almost mythical fruit to a common grocery item shows us how societies change and how symbols evolve. It reminds us that status is often fleeting. What one generation considers the height of luxury, another might see as an everyday item. Today, pineapples are enjoyed by millions around the world. We put them in fruit salads, on pizzas, and smoothies. Most people don't even think about the incredible history behind this spiky fruit. They just enjoy its sweet and tangy taste. The idea of renting one for a party seems quaint, almost absurd to us now. But it was a very real, very logical solution in a time when a pineapple was much, much more than just a fruit. It was a crown, a statement, and a passport to social prominence.